Once upon a time, in an old countryside village surrounded by hills and farmland, there lived an elderly man named Thomas. The village was quiet and simple. Dusty roads stretched between wooden houses. Old barns stood beside open fields. People greeted each other by name, and life moved slowly. Every afternoon, Thomas walked to the village square carrying his cane. There, under a large oak tree, stood an old wooden bench. 3 other elderly men always sat there with him. They wore old-fashioned clothes, suspenders, flat caps, boots, and weather jackets. Their faces were lined with age and years of hard work. Every day, they sat shoulder to shoulder. They rarely talked. Sometimes they nodded. Sometimes they sighed. But mostly, they sat in silence, staring straight ahead at an old brick wall across the road. It had become their routine. Same bench, same people, same wall, same silence. To them, it felt safe. It felt familiar. And over time, they stopped questioning it. Then one afternoon, something unusual happened. When Thomas arrived, the bench was full. Travelers from another town had taken every seat. A young couple laughed together. A man read a newspaper. Another drank coffee. There was no room left. Thomas stood there quietly. He could have been angry. He could have walked home. But instead, he smiled softly and turned toward the village store. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a simple foldable wooden chair. He placed it beside the bench and sat down. Then he tossed crumbs to the birds pecking nearby. As he sat there waiting, his eyes drifted away from the usual direction. For the first time in years, he looked behind the bench, and what he saw stopped him cold. At the far end of the village was a beautiful grassy hill, glowing in afternoon sunlight. Wildflowers moved in the breeze. Trees swayed gently. The sky stretched wide and golden. It was breathtaking. And suddenly Thomas realized something painful. For years, he and the others had been facing a wall, while a beautiful horizon waited just behind them. He slowly looked back at the 3 men on the bench. They hadn't noticed. They were still staring forward, still silent, still comfortable. Thomas stood up, picked up his chair, and began walking toward the hill. Each step felt strange, yet exciting, like waking up after a long sleep. When he reached the top, he set the chair down and sat. The wine touched his face. The sun warmed his hands. Birds circled overhead. For the first time in years, Thomas smiled, because he was no longer facing the wall. Thomas sat quietly on the hill, his old wooden chair planted firmly in the grass. From up there, the whole world felt different. The village below looked smaller. The sounds were softer. The air was cleaner. A warm breeze brushed across his face, carrying the smell of fresh earth and wildflowers. For years, Thomas believed peace came from routine. He thought safety meant staying in the same place, doing the same thing every single day. But now, as he watched the sun dip low across the fields, he understood something deeper. Peace did not come from standing still. Peace came from being free. The next morning, Thomas did not return to the bench. Instead, he carried his chair to the edge of a quiet lake outside the village. He sat there for hours, watching the sunrise turn the water gold. The reflection danced like fire across the surface. Another day, he walked farther than he had in years. He carried the chair to a wide open meadow filled with tall grass and yellow flowers. There he listened to the wind move through the fields like music. On another afternoon, he placed the chair beside a rushing river. The water never stopped moving. It rolled over stones, around fallen branches, and kept going forward. Thomas smiled. The river reminded him that life was meant to move, not remain trapped in one place forever. Weeks became months. Months became to years. And with every new place he visited, Thomas felt younger inside. The mountains taught him strength. The lake taught him calm. The river taught him movement. The open road taught him courage. Though his body was old, his spirit had awakened. One crisp autumn afternoon, Thomas returned to the village park. The old bench was still there beneath the oak tree, and sitting on it were the same 3 elderly men. Same caps, same coats, same silence, same wall. Nothing had changed. Thomas stood for a moment and looked at them kindly. He felt no anger, no judgment, only understanding. Many people stay where they are because comfort feels safe. Fear makes routine seem wise. Sameness feels easier than risk, so they remain seated, even when a better view is waiting behind them. Without saying a word, Thomas unfolded 2 extra wooden chairs and placed them beside the bench. He didn't force anyone to move. He didn't lecture them. He simply offered a choice, an invitation, a chance to turn around. Then Thomas picked up his own chair, smiled softly, and walked down the road once more, toward another field, another river, another horizon. The truth is, most people spend their lives facing walls. They sit where they have always sat, think what they have always thought, fear what they have always feared, and call it safety. But growth has never lived inside comfort zones. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave step, one small decision, one turn of the head, to finally face the horizon.